Good morning, everybody. It is actually March the 3rd today, and I just wanted to welcome you to the the Berean Post podcasts and our little morning devotional. We're going to be continuing with the book of Colossians. We're actually on Colossians chapter 1, verse 2. Let's go ahead and get started. To the saints and the faithful brethren in Christ who are in Colossae. The Apostle Paul begins his letter to the brothers and sisters at the Church of Colossae by calling them saints. According to the biblical definition of a saint, Paul's greeting should not come as a surprise. However, the biblical definition of a saint may not be immediately clear to the modern reader, as words gain different definitions over the years. Thus, when Paul begins his letter to the Colossians by addressing the church's members as saints, it may leave some people wondering about what actually a saint is. So today in this episode, what we want to do is explore what the biblical definition of saint is. First, let's talk about how the word saint is used in the vernacular. In the vernacular language, the word saint is often used to refer to a person who is exceptionally virtuous, selfless, and devoted to religious or humanitarian causes. It may also describe someone who has demonstrated exceptional kindness or generosity towards other people. So the word saint can be used in lots of different ways, sometimes playfully or ironically, to describe someone that's perceived to be over sanctimonious or self-righteous in their behavior and beliefs. So an example of the word saint being used in the vernacular or playfully or ironically, it would be kind of like someone saying, "Oh, look, you're such a saint," kind of with a sarcastic tone, with the implication being that the person is a hypocrite or insincere in their claims of moral superiority. So, what about saint according to the Catholic Church? Now we're talking about a completely different thing. And because the Catholic Church has its own definition of what a saint is, and it differs actually from the Bible, we'll talk about that in a bit. According to the Catholic Church, becoming a saint is no easy matter. Saints are, in fact, few and far between. The definition of a saint, according to the Catholic Church, is as follows. A saint is a person who's lived a life of exemplary holiness, virtue, and devoted to God and others. According to the Catholic Church, a saint are recognized as worthy of veneration and an icon for, basically they can help people get to heaven. They can help intercede on behalf of the living. Now, according to the Catholic Church, there's a very stringent criteria for being a saint. The person must have lived a heroic, virtuous life demonstrated by their selflessness for God and others. The person must have performed at least 2 miracles after their death. That's right, I said after their death. And that actually has to be investigated. That claim goes through a rigorous process of investigation. An example might be Saint Pedro Pio. He was a friar who died in 1968 and was canonized by the Catholic Church in 2002. Now, according to the Catholic Church, Saint Pedro was Padre Pio was known to have miraculous gifts, including the ability to read souls, bilocate, and heal the sick. After his death, there have been numerous reports of people being healed through his intercession. And so these reports of healings have actually been carefully investigated by the Catholic Church and have contributed to his recognition as being a saint. So, again, according to the Catholic Church, a person must have lived a heroic and virtuous life. They must have performed at least 2 miracles after their death. The person's life and writings must be free from doctrinal error or moral flaw. A person must have been dead for at least 5 years before canonization can begin, so they're actually canonized as a saint. And a person must be approved for beatification, a recognition of their holy life, before being approved for canonization as a saint. Now, I'm not here to criticize the Catholic's definition of what a saint is. I'm simply wanting to point out that the biblical definition of the saint and the Catholic definition of the saint, or the vernacular definition of the saint, definition of a saint are all completely different. Let's contrast the difference. In the vernacular, we said saint is often used to describe a person that is considered to be exceptionally good or selfless, but has nothing to do with a religious affiliation or beliefs. They're just morally good people. In the Catholic Church, their definition of a saint is a little more stringent. It's tied to their specific religious tradition. And to become a saint, the person has to meet specific criteria. And in contrast, the New Testament actually doesn't provide a specific definition of a saint. Instead, in the Bible, the term refers to all believers in Christ. Every believer in Christ is a saint, regardless of their status or their accomplishments. In this sense, being a saint is not achieved through specific actions or qualifications, but it's inherent in one's relationship with God through faith in Jesus Christ. Now, the Greek word for holy is hagios, which is also the same word used for saint. The concept of holiness in the Bible is not primarily a matter of moral perfection, but it's actually a question of being set apart for God's purposes. And this can be seen through both the Old and the New Testament. In the Old Testament, they were objects that were considered holy, places that were considered holy, and the nation was considered holy. So in the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for holy is kadosh, which means set apart. For example, in Exodus 19:6, God tells the Israelites, "You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Here, holy refers to their being set apart for God's purposes. Similarly, in the New Testament, the Greek word hagios is used to refer to believers as saints. You can verify this with Romans 1:7, 1 Corinthians 1:2. This also emphasizes their designation as being set apart for God's purposes rather than their morality or moral perfection. Holiness and being a saint in the Bible are primarily about being in a relationship with God and his purposes in serving him. Well, let's end with this question. How do you become marked as a saint and set apart for a particular purpose in Christ? This is how you do it. Putting one's faith in Christ and allowing his Spirit to regenerate and convert them is the way to become marked as a saint and set apart for a specific purpose of love and good works. According to the biblical definition of saint, it's not a reference to a specific class of people who achieved a higher level of righteousness, but to all believers in Jesus Christ who have been redeemed and made holy by his sacrifice. Therefore, when a person puts their faith in Christ and allows his Spirit to work in them, they too can be marked as a saint and set apart for God's purposes.